The first sanguophage appeared thousands of years ago, when the Lord Explorer Varandur sought to control hyper-intelligent Archite, and found himself transformed by it instead. Every sanguophage can be found as a descendant from him. Near impossible to notice any differences from baseliners, sanguophages can be found living among humans everywhere. So we're going to go through this as quickly and as best as possible. This is a summary of sanguophages, not an in-depth guide, but let's look at the pros and cons, and let's use...
Efficiency, efficiency, efficiency.
Could probably just say it once.
Are you making fun of my stutter?
So, sanguophages essentially have superpowers known as Archite, and some of these are active abilities, some of them are passive. It's essential to know them all though. These include Gene Implanter, a way to keep the bloodline going with a few downsides. A sanguophage is essentially a vampire. This ability allows them to choose who to feed on or who to turn into another sanguophage. It passes along a copy of the xenogenes, everything the sanguophage is, into another willing host. This ability has a staggering 2-year cooldown, so use it wisely. And if you choose to use it more than once in a 2-year time frame, it will kill the colonist attempting to pass on the gene, so it will kill the sanguophage. However, the recipient of the new xenogene will then have a period in which they start to turn into a sanguophage themselves. Ageless, a way to keep that baby-faced beauty. This gene kicks in at the biological age of 13 and continuously slows their aging. By the time they hit 18, they are no longer aging. Archite metabolism. This improves their This improves the metabolic efficiency. There really isn't any information on this particular gene, except for the fact that it's worth some money if you find it. Deathless. What the name suggests, as long as their brain remains intact, they are good to go. If taking damage would otherwise kill them, they enter a coma, which we'll touch on soon. All fatal conditions are removed during this coma, so it can be for quite some time if taking a lot of damage. They do not regenerate limbs or organs except for the torso. They enter the death rest and lose all their hemogen, which we'll also touch on later. Entering the regeneration coma will cause that pawn to lose 3 to 6% of a total skill XP in a random skill. Non-senescent. I had to Google this word, referring to senescence, which is the process of aging. They never get chronic health-related diseases, such as bad backs, cancer, cataracts, or dementia. They have total immunity to most conditions except hearing loss. This also prevents toxic buildup during, let's say, a nuclear fallout. Perfect immunity. Immune to fatal diseases, flu, malaria, plague, sleeping sickness, infections, and lung rot. Good to note that if a commoner with a pre-existing condition is turned into a sanguophage via the gene implanter skill, they will still have it, but it does prevent new illnesses. Scarless. This gene regenerates cells which can heal old wounds. Every 15 to 30 days, the sanguophage heals one permanent injury or chronic condition. Okay, we've covered all the Archite level genes, the superpowers of the sanguophage. Now we will look at hemogenic abilities and what hemogen is. So first, hemogenic. This gene essentially allows a mana bar of blood. This is a resource used for some abilities and during just the average day. So we will look into 2 other genes in this to help explain some functions. You need hemogen, which is blood, and if you don't get any, you'll be moody much like Edward. Team Edward, hoorah! Starting with minor cravings until they have major cravings, where they lose an increasing amount of mood, consciousness, and feel pain. But how can you increase your hemogen? Well, you can consume a hemogen pack, or you can use blood feed. Blood feed, it's a big one, but let's break it down. You bite a target and drink its blood. Can't be a carrier of the hemogenic gene, so you can't do it to another sanguophage. You will give them a pretty big debuff because of this blood loss and being bit they're not too happy about, unless you have the precept from the Ideology DLC. It's It's also good to note that you have to bite people that are not attacking your colony at the time, so a slave or a colonist or someone that's downed. That's okay. If you do have the blood feeders precept, you actually get a bonus from being around sanguophages. Much like a familiar serves vampires, these blood feeders are big fans of sanguophages. There is also Hemogen Drain. This just drains Hemogen each day, making it a need for the sanguophage to feed. Okay, now on to the other abilities in the hemogenic genes. The sanguophage carries glands that are located on their hands and wrists, and the compound has a coagulating effect, helping to stop bleeding and promote healing. This gene is incredibly useful for those in combat situations, or for those who need to quickly tend to injuries in emergency situations. Pretty much just stops all bleeding on any wounds. Long jump legs. They also carry hemogen-powered muscle fibers in their legs that enable them to jump great distances. With the long jump ability, they can quickly jump to a selected location, if it's in sight, so it can't be blocked by walls or mountains or doors or anything like that. During the jump, they're immune to all damage, and the ability has a range of about 19 tiles, and a tiny warm-up of 0.5 of a second. Piercing spine. This gene allows them to make an opening in their upper chest, which grows a keratin spine. They can launch these bony spines at high velocities towards nearby targets with astounding accuracy. A fun fact about this ability is that it's ranged stab damage, which is unique. It can damage internal organs without damaging the host area. So for example, it can damage and rupture a liver, but it won't hurt the torso. Death rest. Sanguophages carrying this gene have the ability to enter a special coma called Death Rest, which allows them to regenerate themselves and gain significant bonuses. However, if they delay this process, they will suffer from Death Rest exhaustion. To initiate Death Rest, the sanguophage must have a casket, and the process lasts for about 4 days, depending on how much rest they need, during which they cannot take any action. The sanguophage will need to undergo death rest roughly every 30 days, and if their need hits 0, their maximum consciousness will be reduced to 50%, and their psychic sensitivity will be decreased fully. The duration of death rest can be interrupted for a stat penalty, but it can also be accelerated and enhanced with the use of certain special buildings and technologies. Each building needs to be connected to the casket and supplied with hemogen to provide its particular buff. Look on the screen to find the specific information about the death rest related buildings. Now we're through that, we're up to the general genes, the strengths and weaknesses of the sanguophages part of the video. Alright. Super fast wound healing, only found on hussars and sanguophages, increases healing by 400%, so 4 times faster than baseliner. Psi sensitivity. Makes them more psychically sensitive and increases their psi focus through meditation by 10% a day. They suffer from negative effects and positive effects more. So for example, if a psychic drone hits you, it'll be stronger in the effect if it's positive or negative. Fast runner. 0.2 cells per second increased in movement speed. Not as fast as impids at 0.4 cells per second increased, but still makes them faster than most other xenotypes. Tox immunity. Total immunity to toxic buildup from all sources, which include polluted ground, toxic fallout, tox gas, direct attacks or injections from poison. They got god-tier kidneys and livers, and they can just filter it out, I guess. Mild UV sensitivity. They don't like the big fireball in the sky, and when in direct sunlight they are slightly slower and suffer a mood debuff of -6. It's good to know that in direct sunlight, their average move speed is slightly slower than all other xenotypes. Tinder skin. They just take 4 times the damage from fire, which, when coupled with pyrophobia, an intense fear of fire. If any fire is within 21 tiles of the sanguophage, this can trigger the fleeing fire mental break after a very short time near fire. Aggressive. Now, many xenotypes carry this, and it just doubles the social fight chance, and that the mental break, if occurred, is violent. They're also fairly more likely to attempt to break out of prison. Strong melee damage, and you guessed it, they hit harder in melee range, 50% harder to be exact. Robust. It allows them to take 15% less damage. It's a fantastic gene and really creates a solid fighter, especially for melee. Attractive. They are just more beautiful than the average. They have a beauty of +1, and this increases the opinion of them by +20. Dark vision. Well, you guys actually pointed this out to me with the Dirt Moles video. It actually helped me a lot. When I did the video, you guys pointed out that dark vision is fantastic, and in my head I always coupled it with UV sensitivity, which is incorrect. Dark vision is just a bonus and allows them to see in the dark a bit better. Strong melee, social, and intelligence. The Sanguophages have a passion in melee, social, and intelligence, +8 in all of those skills as well, which is fantastic, especially when coupled with the next gene. Low sleep. Their sleepiness increases at a much slower rate, allowing them to make use of more time in the day and kind of makes up for a bit of the death rest. So they can do a lot more researching at night when others may sleep. And can you believe it, we've made it through the genes. Now the analysis, and we'll keep it brief. There's a lot of information, but these are kind of some key points. They have many pros and cons that need to be considered when playing with Sanguophages. But generally speaking, they are worth having around as an incredibly strong colonist. With low sleep, it means they make up a lot of the time that they may miss during death rest. Fast Walker and Robust are just great genes, especially for melee fighters. They are also incredibly strong with their Hemogenic abilities at costs of needing to drink blood. When choosing a host to implant the Sanguophage gene into, colonists with brain damage or chronic conditions are great choices, as that will be cured by the Scarless gene. Also, good to note that the Sanguophage will override all other Xeno genes. So if you have Hussars, Genies, or Highmates, and you implant them with the Sanguophage gene, they will lose all their respective genes. Likewise, if you implant a Sanguophage with a Xenogerm that isn't Sanguophage, it will erase all Sanguophage genes, and they will become that respective gene pool. Ways to obtain Sanguophages. Now, there's Sanguophage Scenario. It's an option if you own the Biotech DLC. It allows you to begin with one Sanguophage and one colonist. Of course, you can recruit them by capturing them and holding them prisoner. But be aware that the aggressive gene is also something that could be causing problems during that time. Also, you could find the gene and implant them. There are also a few different quests which allow you to get more Sanguophages into your colony. And that's pretty much everything from the Sanguophages on a basic term. If you have any more tips that you could share with other people, leave them in the comments below. Much love. I appreciate all of you. And we'll be back with more content other than Xenotypes, because we've completed them all. So go check them out. Much love. Take care. Goodbye.